I've got no roots, but my home was never on the ground. I've got no roots, but my home was never on the ground.
So I'm super excited to say that this video is sponsored by Rover, and it is literally the perfect thing to share with you guys for this particular video if you're looking to make extra money in order to budget for a horse. I know most of you guys are animal lovers if you're watching my channel because it's about animals, and Rover is the perfect place for animal lovers and owners alike. It sets up pet sitters and dog walkers with owners of the animals that they can walk and take care of, and allows owners to have peace of mind in knowing that they're picking someone out that is qualified and caring for their animals, and they can feel comfortable leaving their animals in the care of the people that advertise through Rover. And on the flip side, for people looking to make extra money, it is such a perfect way to add to your income because it allows you flexible hours to set your own rates, and it is so easy to sign up and use. You can start making money pretty much right away. It's super easy to sign up. The process isn't intensive, it's not hard to figure out, and it's available in the US, Canada, and the UK. So I know that most of my following resides in those areas, so I hope lots of you can have a use for this and can start saving money for your horse in that way. The other thing that I want to touch on is that if you are able to offer dog boarding, if your house is set up for it, or it can be, those people on Rover tend to make double the amount of regular pet sitters on the website. So that is a super lucrative way to use Rover, and I definitely recommend it if you have the means to, because first of all, it's a lot of fun and you get to hang out with dogs, and secondly, you get to make a ton of money and you make double the amount of sitters who offer different services on Rover, which is incredible. So a couple of other things I want to mention about Rover is that you do need to be 18 years or older to sign up, and there is a background check process, but getting a background check done is part of a lot of different jobs, and it also allows the animal owners who are looking for people to provide these services to have peace of mind knowing that someone checks out and is safe. So if you're looking for someone to take care of your animals, this is also such a good site to use because you know that these people have been screened and that they're credible. Completely free to sign up on Rover, and they only take 20% of your income, which is so small considering they're connecting you with all of your business and allowing you to use their platform to connect yourself with different types of people that you can make an income from. Sitters can make up to $1,000 a month or more, which is amazing, especially if you're only using it to supplement your current income. So it is truly a really good way to earn some extra money, and there's a ton of support if you need help. They have 24/7 support team to help you out when you need it. So if you're having trouble figuring out ways to make your account stand out and attract customers, they're totally there to help you. So one of the best things about Rover, in my opinion, is that you can manage your calendar, bookings, and payments all through their app or their website, which means that you don't have to get a third-party app to manage payments in specific. That's something that can be really difficult if you're doing entrepreneurial work. So it makes it so convenient, and honestly, it's probably the best way to advertise yourself for animal services and know that you're getting set up with legitimate people, know that you're going to get paid in an easy to track manner. So I definitely recommend checking it out, and I really hope it works out for some of you guys who are trying to supplement your income. So first things first, I don't think that there should be the expectation for parents to buy you a horse. I see kids everywhere asking how to convince their parents to buy them a horse, or being upset when they don't, and I have a big problem with that because horses are very expensive. They're a huge commitment financially and time-wise, so it's not really fair to expect parents to carry the weight of that commitment, especially if you're not going to take the steps to show that you're serious about wanting a horse and that you're willing to work for it. So I think that no matter what, even if your parents do want to help you buy a horse eventually, I think that you need to show that you're serious about wanting one, and to do that, I think that you need to work for it in some way. So for those of you who are underage, it can be hard to find jobs to earn extra money, and I totally understand that. My best recommendation for you guys would be to ask around your barn if you're already riding and see if they need anyone to do feeding, stalls, helping tack horses, etc. That way, even if they're not necessarily willing to pay you cash, you could set up an arrangement to work off board when you do eventually get a horse. That's also a good way to learn more about horses and the industry while you work towards getting your own horse. Some other options for people who are under 18 would be babysitting, getting a paper route, doing chores around the house, lawn mowing. To work at like a restaurant, I would definitely recommend starting out in the restaurant industry because they do hire people without much experience. You could also look in retail. There's tons of options out there, but if you're not able to get a job at a store or something, I'd say the best places to start would be stable work, lawn mowing and garden work, or a paper route or babysitting. If you're too young to get a job in a restaurant or a different type of job that's on a payroll with a company, those would be my main recommendations for you guys. And also, if your parents are considering buying you a horse but are on the fence about it, there's things you could do around the house chore-wise to show that you're very serious and that you really want the horse, and also show your dedication to riding and try to help out with your lessons. If you can earn any extra money in any way, try to offer that to your parents and be like, look, I'm really serious about helping you out get a horse. I really want this. I'm willing to do anything, and just work. Show that you're very serious by working. That is my #1 recommendation. Some other things that you can do to budget for a horse are selling anything that you have that's sellable that you no longer need, and clearing out stuff that way. It also gets rid of clutter, so it's a win-win. Some other great ways to save money would be to cut back on the amount of food you buy. If you tend to buy a lot of food, don't buy as many clothes if you're into buying clothes, and just kind of cutting back on any extras that you're currently spending lots of money on, and then tucking that money away to save. I would say one of the most important things before getting a horse is to be aware of how much money you're consistently bringing in, and aware of how much money you need to support a horse. The important thing to realize is that supporting a horse is so much more than just being able to buy the horse and being able to afford horse board. The purchase price of the horse is honestly the cheapest part. People always say this, even if you get an expensive horse, honestly the purchase price is the cheapest part. Board is expensive, but even the board, that's one of the cheaper parts of owning a horse. There's vet bills, there's farrier, and you have to take into account emergency bills if your horse ever has an accident, because it's not really if it happens, it's when. If you're owning horses, you're going to have a big vet bill eventually, and you need to be prepared for that. I would recommend checking out insurance agencies to get your horse insured for medical, just in case, because if you have a big bill like colic surgery, that can run you into the ground like over $10,000, and let's face it, most people don't really have that much money tucked away. So I would definitely recommend considering insurance and looking up the cost of that in your area. I know for me personally, it's around $30 per horse a month, and I find that a lot easier to manage than tucking away tons and tons of money and trying to have over $10,000 saved in the event of a huge surgery bill. However, there is still a deductible with insurance, so you still do need some money tucked away at the very least to pay the deductible, or in the event that your insurance for whatever reason does not cover what happened. The other thing to keep in mind is that there's no way to ensure that your horse is going to cost the cheapest in terms of what horses cost. There's no way to guarantee that you only get an easy keeper or a horse that'll only stay an easy keeper forever. There's no way to guarantee that your horse is never going to need shoes or special type of shoeing for whatever problem. You can look for horses that are lower maintenance, but things can change, and it's important to take that into account. And it's also important to know how much stuff in your area costs, because the cost of boarding and taking care of horses varies widely depending on where you live. I live in a very expensive area for keeping horses, so horse board here is quite high, whereas people in other areas might have a lower cost of board depending on the cost of living and the cost of hay and stuff where you live. So that's very important to take into account. I would recommend doing research and looking around locally to see what the going rate for board is, and also the going rate for grain, hay, farrier, basic vet fees, etc. Call around and really just try to find out as much as you can so that you're prepared. Another way to kind of cut back the costs if you're trying to save money, especially on board, is to kind of like take your expectations for a fancy boarding facility and bring them down a little bit. If you give up having things like an indoor arena and you only have an outdoor, it sucks because you have to ride in the rain and the snow if it snows where you live. But it's generally a lot cheaper, and also keeping a horse out on field board instead of in a stall is often cheaper. And honestly, it's preferable to have your horse out as much as possible in terms of their personal health. So if you don't need to have them on stall board for some reason, sometimes it's best to have them outside with a shelter. So those are some ways you can cut back on the cost of board. For farrier and vet bills, those are pretty non-negotiable because they are routine things that your horse will need. If your horse doesn't need any extra vet care for the year, usually they're only seeing the vet around twice a year. But you still have to take into account vaccines and getting their teeth done. Those are some regular maintenance things that you need to have done by your vet regularly. And farrier, you're usually expecting to have them out anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. Some horses might be able to go longer than that, but generally you're expecting about 6 weeks that you need the farrier out every 6 weeks. So that's a consistent bill that you need to be able to pay. And then the other thing to consider is that after buying a horse, you do need to buy a lot of different stuff for the horse in order to ride it and be able to use it. So you need stuff like brushes, blankets, a saddle, bridle, bits, protective boots. There's a ton of stuff that you'll need to buy, and this can run quite expensive. So my recommendation to keep those costs down would be to shop secondhand and shop sales. So definitely join your local horse groups and keep an eye open and just gradually collect the non-sized stuff over the years while you save up for your horse. I wouldn't recommend. Okay, so those are a lot of things to take into account, and honestly, horses are very expensive. But I would say horse ownership is rewarding. However, if you genuinely cannot budget for it right now, it's a lot more stress than it's worth to be running yourself into the ground work-wise just to afford a horse. So in the event that you cannot currently afford to own a horse, there's tons of different things you can look into still. Like leasing, you can look into half leases, which are just a few days a week, full leases, which are pretty much every day of the week, usually around 5 days a week with 2 days off, or free leases, which despite the name aren't actually free. You take on the costs of the horse, like with board, farrier, etc., without actually having to buy the purchase price of the horse. So if you're not in the position where you have the purchase price, but you can afford the general care without having to worry about keeping the horse long term, a free lease is a good idea because you can send the horse back if something happens and you can no longer afford it. But it's just like having your own horse in a lot of ways. Some other things you could do are lessons, of course. That's a really great way to spend your money if you're not super experienced yet, is just to get more lessons. And then the other option is if you cannot afford to do much, but you're already at the point where you can ride and do stuff if you're already at the point where you can ride and do stuff mostly by yourself, you could look into people who just need their horses exercised. And how to find these people, I'd recommend joining local Facebook groups that cater to horse people around you and post that you're looking for a horse to ride with your experience level, and say that you're maybe willing to clean some stalls or do some work around the barn to help out. And there's always lots of people looking for people to ride. Another option that's kind of similar is a working student position. You could go work for a barn and do stuff like cleaning stalls, tacking horses, grooming, sometimes hacking and warming up, and in return they'll give you lessons and stuff. So that can be another good option, and you also typically tend to learn a lot if you do something like that. So it's definitely worth it, in my opinion, to consider options like that if you can't own a horse currently. And it's also important to remember, even if it doesn't feel like it right now, the odds are that you will eventually get to a point in your life where owning a horse is a realistic goal that you can actually reach. So don't feel bad about yourself currently if you cannot afford one, or if your parents won't buy you one, because there's so many people who are in the same boat as you. Make the best of the situation you have before you buy a horse, and get on as many different horses as you can, and just try to broaden your knowledge of horses while you can and while you don't have the huge financial responsibility of owning a horse. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope this gave you guys some ideas of how you could budget for a horse. For me personally, how I budget is by working full-time, and then I also have stuff like my Teespring business with my merchandise that I make money off of, and obviously the YouTube videos and stuff. I get ad money from that and from my blog post. But you guys also have to keep in mind that I am an adult and I am able to work a lot more than students can. For me personally, I take a 60% course load, so it's not technically a full course load of 5 courses. I take 3, which allows me to work full-time while I'm in school, and that allows me to afford my horses. And I also have a pretty well-paying job, but I've had to work up to the point of getting paid as much as I do. And then yeah, the ad money and stuff does really help me out for extra costs, and I have my horses insured always. But yeah, like, it's been a lot of saving and it's been a lot of hard work to get to the point where I am. And now, because of my work in the horse industry, acquiring horses for a good price is a lot easier than what it would have been when I was younger. And I have the experience level to get cheaper horses that I can train up to do what I want. So it is more affordable for me now than it was when I was a lot younger. And when I was younger, I was doing stuff like working around the barn and stuff, whereas now I do stuff like horse training, galloping race horses, and then the YouTube, blogging, etc. And I also sometimes do freelance writing. So it has changed as I've gotten older, and it's given me more of an ability to support myself. So as you get older and as you get better jobs and you work up the ranks in the workforce, you're going to be able to do more. So don't feel too bad about things currently, especially if you're in school, especially if you're in university and you're paying for it yourself. I know the feeling. I'm doing the same. It's very expensive and it's really hard to manage, and honestly, if I didn't have horses, I'd have a lot more money. I don't have much money at all because of the horses. So don't feel bad if you have to wait. Good things happen to those who wait, and sorting it out so that you can get a horse without having a ton of stress about affording it will be so much sweeter in the end. So I really hope that this helped you guys out with some ideas on how to afford horses, and I really wish all of you the best in getting into horses and being able to do what you love.